Today we will be showing you how to install a RaceChip on a Volkswagen 1.5 TSi. Before installing the RaceChip, please wait until your engine is cool enough to work on. Put your parking brake or emergency brake on. If your vehicle is equipped with an alarm system, please disable it. Pop the hood, roll up the windows, close the doors, and press the lock button on your key fob and move that key fob 30 feet away. You're gonna wait about 10 minutes after for all the electricity to clear from underneath the hood. Before we start the installation, remove the plastic engine cover and set aside. We will begin by removing the throttle body plug. Then locating our boost pressure sensor underneath the intake manifold. This will be our A connection on the RaceChip supplied wiring harness. We will first unplug the OEM sensor plug by pulling back on the locking tab and pressing down. For the video, we will use 2 long screwdrivers to show you how to unplug the OEM sensor plug. Now we can go ahead and route the harness. Before we go ahead and plug it in, with the female end, we want to make sure you use the smooth side and connect it to the locking tab side of the OEM male sensor plug, and then we'll lock it in place with the gray locking tab. Before you grab the RaceChip male connection and go ahead and plug that into the OEM sensor itself, and just like the other side, we want to make sure we lock it in place with the gray locking tab. With the A connection securely made, we can now move on to our B, which is going to our manifold pressure sensor. We will begin this step by routing the wiring harness just like the A connection. The OEM sensor for the B connection will be the same as the A connection. Pull back on the gray locking tab and press down. Before we go ahead and install the RaceChip wiring harness, again, just like the A connection, smooth side to the locking tab, lock it in place before we connect our male connection to the OEM sensor and lock it in place with the gray locking tab. Now it's very important, before we move on with the installation, we reinstall the plug to the throttle body and lock it in place. Next, we can move on to our final connection, which will be our C connection going to the camshaft position sensor. Just like the other 2 connections, we'll begin by routing the harness. Then we'll pull back and push down on the gray locking tab before we connect our RaceChip wiring harness, and just like the other 2 connections, we want to put the smooth side to the gray locking tab. With the harness routed, we are now ready to move on to installing the RaceChip tuning device. First, begin by removing the deactivation plug and setting aside someplace safe. Then we'll install our 4 quick disconnect mounting tabs. before we use our 2 longer supplied zip ties for mounting the race chip in a secure place that is going to be dry and cool. Generally, a good place near the battery or the factory ECU is going to be a good spot to mount the race chip unit. And when we use the zip ties, we want to make sure that we don't zip tie too tight on any electrical connections or wires. Then this brings us to our last step, which is reinstall the engine cover, and then get out, drive, and enjoy your race chip.